Today's episode is brought to you by the Whole Life Decluttering Workshop, featuring a proprietary 6-step system, the Simple System, to help you declutter your life in a way that will last. Purchase this workshop on demand and receive the video training and dedicated workbook at positivelyproductive.com/resources. I think it's a beautiful thing to care for others. Of course, I believe in it. I've done it multiple times over. For my grandmother, for my father, for my mother, for my children, as well as helping friends too. We need to look out for each other, but we must do it in a healthy way. We must include ourselves in the mix. Give to others, but don't do it to your own detriment. You're listening to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zaratny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a productivity coach certified in positive psychology and stress management. Join me as we explore ways to live a more proactive, positive life with episodes on productivity, self-awareness, mindset, entrepreneur life, habits and systems, simplicity, fun, and more. I understand overwhelm personally as a multi-passionate entrepreneur, wife and mom to kids and cats, and as a caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. Welcome to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa, and today's topic is another personal one for me. As a repeat caregiver for elderly parents and as a mom of 2, I've experienced the challenge of caring for others while also trying to care for myself, which is difficult enough in general, but especially so when resources and time dictate that I must choose. Keeping it real and perhaps a bit brutally honest, there's rarely been a time when there was a choice to make that anyone around me expected me to choose me. It's not a common expectation, nor is it one that's generally approved. And I'm not saying that people don't want me to take care of myself, but when it comes down to choosing between the person I'm taking care of and me, when it comes to moms, when it comes to caregivers, our society elevates those who are giving to others, not taking care of themselves. Case in point, we love the sacrificing mom, right? The one who gives up everything and leaves herself with nothing. And I am here to change that narrative. I want my children to know that I gave them so very much, and I did sacrifice, but not myself entirely. I also took care of me too, because I'm modeling that for future generations. When it comes to the elderly and infirm, the natural instinct is to be concerned about those who need the care, not those giving the care. And I get that. But I also refuse to leave the caregiver behind in all of this and act as though caring for another means giving up your own life. That's why it's my mission to be a caregiver advocate. And today's focus is how we must care for the caregiver. Let me reassure you, I think it's a beautiful thing to care for others. Of course, I believe in it. I've done it multiple times over. For my grandmother, for my father, for my mother, for my children, as well as helping friends too. We need to look out for each other, but we must do it in a healthy way. We must include ourselves in the mix. Give to others, but don't do it to your own detriment. I know my fellow caregivers struggle with that, especially when everyone else isn't inclined to remind them that they need to take care of them. That's why I keep talking about it. My goal is to find ways to care for others that isn't detrimental to the caregiver. And my exploration comes from experience because I've struggled with this myself. Part of my origin story, if you will, was a time when I cared for my mom who had Alzheimer's. I was pregnant twice during this time, and at one of the most challenging points, I was caring for her while my children were in the toddler and infant stages. I've shared the story on the podcast in episode 34, and whenever anyone asks about my experience and if I'd change anything, it's rarely about how I cared for my family. Of course, the narrative was originally me being so frustrated and wishing that I could have been more patient and that I'd wished I'd learned more about the disease so I wouldn't have taken the things that she did so personally. There's a lot of lessons learned. But when I'm truly being honest with myself, and in turn, I want to be as honest as I can with others because it's the only way we're going to change this narrative, my real answer is that I would have cared for me better. It's why I'm a self-care and caregiver advocate now, and why I look to the caregiver to see what they need first. When everyone else is paying attention to the one who needs care, I'm watching the caregiver. They're my focus. I even give caregivers a special discount on my coaching because I know how much they need care too. If you're a caregiver, this episode is dedicated to you and for you. If you know a caregiver, please listen and please share it with them. I know how challenging it can be for caregivers to make time for themselves when they're responsible for others, but my hope is that we keep finding ways to not only encourage the need for self-care, but actual tactical approaches, ways that they can find the right moments to do the right things for them efficiently and effectively. So it's essential to understand why caring for the caregiver is so critical. I mean, I think it seems obvious, but let's get into the details here. If you're a caregiver, you already know the impact it can have on you mentally and physically. Caring for another can take a tremendous toll on a person's health and well-being. In an abstract from the National Institutes of Health, they indicate the following. Clinical observation and early empirical research showed that assuming a caregiver role can be stressful and burdensome. Caregiving has all the features of a chronic stress experience. It creates physical and psychological strain over extended periods of time, is accompanied by high levels of unpredictability and uncontrollability, has the capacity to create secondary stress in multiple life domains, such as work and family relationships, and frequently requires high levels of vigilance. Caregiving fits the formula for chronic stress so well that it is used as a model for studying the health effects of chronic stress. Let that sink in. Caregiving is so consistently stressful, researchers use it as a model to study chronic stress. And chronic stress is brutal, as so many episodes of this podcast can highlight and attest to. I've offered specifics on stress and ways to mitigate it as well. There's over 20 episodes that relate to stress on the Stress Management playlist, which you can find on the podcast page of the positivelyproductive.com website. And for a foundational understanding, you'll want to listen to episode 180, What Stress Is and How to Manage It. In it, I discuss the major consequences of chronic stress. The impact is physical and emotional, and we need to understand that a body under constant stress is not functioning at its best. Over time, this can have severe consequences, such as being more susceptible to illness, such as burnout. Studies have shown that caregivers often experience higher rates of chronic illness, depression, and anxiety. Studies have even been done on the likelihood of a caregiver passing away first, despite starting out healthier. Although this isn't proven as of yet, there's still plenty of data to show us how potentially dangerous caregiving can be. And this increases as caregivers increase in age. Even more than the physical concerns, caregiving is proven to have a massive impact psychologically. Research has consistently shown relatively large effects, which are moderated by age, socioeconomic status, and availability of support. So while it's good that we're researching this and we can see the trends actually in the studies, I think anecdotally there is plenty to learn. If you've been a caregiver, you know. If you've ever attended a caregiver support group like I have, you have heard the stories that I struggle to describe, but they are proof that strong and good and kind people exist. If you know a caregiver, ask them about it. Ask them what they're experiencing. Get beyond the "how are you doing? I'm okay," or "I'm tired," or "I'm busy." I can tell you that I was not the same. after caring for my mom. And in many respects, I see that as a good thing. I did manage to find the light in the dark, especially in being a coach and helping others. And I have what I consider a second chance at life because I was a younger caregiver. I have life lessons that I carry with me and I have gratitude for. But there is a dark side to this. It took me years of healing to not only get to this point, but also acknowledge that what I experienced was trauma. I've always reserved the idea that PTSD is something for people with more intense experiences, people of honor in the military, people who survive catastrophes. And it absolutely is. It belongs to them, but it belongs to us too. Caregivers can have it too. I also had major physical ailments that I believe were at the very least exacerbated by my situation. I was pre-diabetic at one point, and I can absolutely see now how the intense levels of stress, the chronic stress that never stopped, and lack of sleep contributed to that. There was a point in time with an infant and a toddler and a mom who was sundowning where I barely got to put together maybe an hour or two of rest at a time. And that, man, that is a recipe for disaster. I had issues with my lower back and neck that were potentially pre-existing. I had definitely had injuries that contributed to that, but I struggled to keep on top of that with like PT and going to a chiropractor during this time, during those primary caregiver years, and I know that things worsened as a result. So it's not always about avoiding problems, but sometimes about maintaining health and avoiding a worsening condition, and I struggle to do both. I want to be clear that I feel lucky to be here today, relatively healthy, being able to talk to you. And though dealing with chronic issues, I wonder, though, what I could have avoided. So it's a mixed bag. And a lot of this is speculation, but my pain that I deal with today is a reminder of how serious caregiving really was for me and how important it is that we look out for those who do it. It's easy to agree that caregivers need care too, but I wanted to emphasize why beyond the, well, everyone deserves care. No, they especially do, because they need to be able to mitigate some of the damage that's being done. And there are some very serious potential effects here. So hopefully what I've shared reaffirms our determination to take care of the people who are taking care. Now, let me be clear that when I say we need to watch out for them, I don't mean that they can or should stop caregiving. We need each other and we need the caregivers. What we're striving for here is balance and boundaries and giving them the support that they need, as well as the acknowledgement. It's about sustainable caregiving. Okay, sounds good, but how, right? If you're a caregiver, here are 7 ways that you can prioritize yourself even in the midst of caregiving. And if you're listening on behalf of a caregiver, please share these and consider ways that you could help facilitate each of these things. 1 is to schedule short breaks. Even 15 minutes, 10 minutes even, can make a difference. Use this time to read, meditate, take a walk, get into nature, or just have a quiet moment to yourself. A nap can work wonders, and often shorter naps are actually better for you, so you don't mess up your sleep cycle, but you get rejuvenation. There are a lot of different ways that you can invite rest into your world. So schedule these breaks and try different things. Act like this is an important appointment for you, and also consider taking these breaks when you need them. If you're having a particularly tough day, particularly hard day because you are tired from lack of sleep, if the person you're caring for is a bit more of a struggle and your energy is drained, we have variability in our energy. Acknowledge that and take that break where you can. Number 2 is to accept help and actually ask for it whenever you can. When someone offers to assist, hey, if there's any way I can help you, say yes, and then figure it out. Have the conversation. We've talked before on the podcast about how you can be specific and come up with ideas and help people. But I'm also saying that when you need help, and yes, if you're a caregiver, you need help, period. Find ways. Say yes even before you know what kind of help that will be, and then have a conversation. It could be running errands or have them bring you a meal or just sitting with your loved one for a bit. Accepting help allows you to step away and take care of your own needs without having the distraction of still trying to be in caregiver mode. One of the best ways that we can experience anything in life is by being fully present. So if you have someone take over for you, even if it's for a few moments, it allows you to be fully present in taking care of you. It allows you to reset yourself emotionally and mentally. It can help you de-escalate things, especially if you're caregiving for someone who is challenging you. When I cared for my mom, her cognitive decline made me constantly frustrated. She wouldn't understand what I was trying to say. She wouldn't play by any rules. She didn't understand that there were rules. And especially when we had medical issues, she had broken an ankle and things like that. She would constantly be doing things that were working against me trying to help her. And it's because she didn't understand, but that still didn't make it any less frustrating for me. The bottom line here is that caregiving is a lonely road, and while you might be the primary person in charge, you're not expected to do it all alone. Number 3 is to prioritize sleep. And I get it. It's easier said than done, especially if someone you care for doesn't sleep well. We know sleep is crucial for physical and mental health. We've talked about it on the podcast. I plan to talk about it more. So I encourage you to find ways to establish a consistent sleep routine, to establish a consistent nap routine if that's going to help you get through this time. This could mean adjusting your schedule in other areas of your life. And I don't mean giving up what you love to do. But I also know that our stress response can sometimes include scrolling on our phones and watching a late night movie. And as enticing as that might be, I encourage you to have a cutoff time so you can get proper rest. Number 4 is nourish your body. When you're busy caring for others, it's easy to neglect your own nutrition, not only because you may be busy, but also because your stress response might contribute to grabbing less than healthy food items. There's a vicious cycle of stress and tiredness that makes caffeine and salty snacks and sweet treats seem like the best choices. Companies of snack foods and treat foods, they rely on this. It's what they market. Now, I'm not saying not to have those. I'm a big believer in intuitive eating and having the treats. But what I am saying is be sure to give your body the nutrients it needs to prioritize that. One way to do that is by keeping snacks on hand that help you stay energized. This is also a great thing to ask for when someone asks, how can I help? Bring me some protein snacks, bring me something that's going to be healthy, a pre-made salad, anything that will help energize and that I didn't have to cook. Number 5 is connect with others. I mentioned how caregiving is a lonely road. When you're in the thick of it, you might forget how isolated you've become. You're busy, you're focused, you're in auto mode here, caregiving mode, and suddenly you realize you haven't talked to people. And by the way, if you are listening and you're thinking about caregivers, this is a great way that you can help by reaching out. So do what you can to stay connected to your support system. Talk to friends, family, join a support group. I highly recommend that. I was in 2 and they helped me tremendously. There are many online now, and it's as easy as hopping on your device to get to a moment where you're chatting with someone who gets it. They get what you're going through. They may be able to offer advice. And as a plus, when you share your experiences with others, it also may be you who is a help and a comfort to them too, which can give more meaning to what you're doing, and it can feel so good. Number 6, set boundaries. It's okay to say no. I realized when I first started caring for my mom that I felt compelled to do whatever she needed and wanted. I wanted to make her life better, and that's wonderful. But there are limits. I had limits, and I went past mine before realizing that. And I know when you care for someone with cognitive decline, for example, they might not understand. But You do. You know your limits. So it's essential to communicate them when you can, for those who will get it. And even if someone gets it, they might not agree with it. People who, need what they need or want what they want, people can be problematic and they can make demands. So it's going to be up to you to hold your ground for what you're able to do. Just like pets and kids who may not understand why you do what you do. You may have those you care for who don't or refuse to, and you have to stand your ground. And it's not just about what you want, it's about what you need. This is not selfish, it's self-preservation. Number 7 is engage in activities you enjoy. Even if it feels like there's no time, and I know that's often the case, try to carve out moments for hobbies or activities that bring you joy, bring you some peace, make you feel like you as an individual, not just a caregiver. There are many things you can do while caring for another, like listening to music or maybe watching a show in the background. You may even be able to do some with them if they're still able to engage. If you like to do puzzles, let's say, it's okay if they can't find the right pieces, they still may be engaged with you. Or during those short breaks, maybe do some gardening or crafting. You can scale down the things that you love to fit the situation. If you need to stick to the house, try container gardening. If you love to paint, but you can't bring supplies in, or, you can't handle the supplies in the moment of caring for someone else, maybe watercolor brushes or brush markers could work. If you need to listen to music, but it can be a distraction and you also need to listen for someone you're caring for, you could maybe use a single earbud or use music during your specific breaks. If you love to read, but you need to keep a visual eye on someone, try an audiobook. Whatever you do, make sure you keep embracing what lights you up. That energy will help you show up your best and recover from inevitable challenges. And something else you might want to consider is finding ways to do what you love, things that bring you joy, but you can do so quickly. And you know what? It might even be figuring out what brings you joy. It's a good exercise to have. And in the productivity toolkit that I have on the resources page of the positivelyproductive.com website, you can request the toolkit for free. And in there is something called the Joy List Workbook. And it's actually like your own self-care guide, because by answering a few questions, it's just a couple of pages, it's very quick and it's fun. You can figure out what brings you joy. And with that could be a wonderful exercise in figuring out what things you could do quickly that you can fit into a schedule that feels very challenging sometimes in order to keep doing the things that you love. If many of these suggestions sound like self-care, just like I said, the Joy List Workbook sets up a self-care guide. Yeah, you would absolutely be right. And I'll grant you, self-care has its limits. Like we talked about last week, it's not a panacea. It can't fix burnout, but it has its place to help soothe and energize you and remind you of how worthy you are of care. If you'd like to explore more self-care ideas, I suggest listening to episode 146. It's a roundup episode where I summarized 10 other self-care episodes that offered simple, actionable self-care ideas. You can also look for the self-care playlist on the podcast page of the positivelyproductive.com website. And with any of these episodes that I suggest, you can also go to the podcast page and type in a keyword into the search, and it should bring up the blog page for that episode as well. As we close this episode today, I want to emphasize that caring for yourself is not a luxury. It's not optional. It's a necessity, especially when you're a caregiver. Let's keep the honesty going here. Being a caregiver is a tough and sometimes impossible situation to be in. And it's so important to appreciate all you do. I know I do. I've been there, so I know how tough it is. And if this is what you're doing right now, you are incredible. When you prioritize your own well-being, you'll be better equipped to care for others. But remember, you deserve to feel healthy, supported, and fulfilled, not only as a caregiver, but as an individual. You know the saying, you cannot pour from an empty cup. That's absolutely true. So we want to fill your cup up. But guess what? You are worthy of having a full cup, regardless of if you're pouring from it or not. Thank you for joining me today. Your time is precious, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you have feedback or questions, you can find me through the Connect page of the positivelyproductive.com website. And if you're looking for any of the resources mentioned here, from books to products to training and more, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources.